Hello. On behalf of Calgary Public Library, I would like to welcome you and thank you for joining us to today's program from the vault of the National Music Center. To begin our program today, we acknowledge Mukinstis, the land where the Elbow and Bow Rivers meet. In the spirit of the truth and reconciliation, we recognize the ancestral territories, cultures, and oral practices of the Blackfoot people, the Yahe Nakoda Nation, the Beaver people of the Tsuut'ina Nation, and the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. Calgary Public Library serves the community on this traditional land, and we honor all people who share, celebrate, and steward the Treaty 7 territory of Southern Alberta. During today's program, we will watch a video and then we'll have guests who will talk about the National Music Center. Please send us your questions and comments through the chat. And also, if you have any technical difficulties throughout the program, please send us a message and my colleague Catherine and I will try to assist you with that. At the end of the program, before you leave, you'll be prompted to fill out an online survey. We will truly appreciate if you have a few minutes to do that, as your feedback is important and it will help us improve the future program offer. And thank you in advance for that. This program is part of Historic Calgary Week, and I would now like to ask Irene DeBoni, a co-chair of the Historic Calgary Week Committee, to take over. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Greetings and welcome to the 31st Historic Calgary Week, zooming back, unmasking our history. As stated, my name is Irene DeBoni, and I would like to thank you for coming to From the Vault. Historic Calgary Week is presented by Chinook Country Historical Society, a chapter of the Historical Society of Alberta. This year, we would particularly like to thank the Government of Canada and Heritage Calgary for their generous support of Historic Calgary Week. Calgary Public Library has been a valuable partner, not just for Historic Calgary Week, but throughout the past year, as it enabled CCHS to present 27 virtual programs during the last year after we had to cancel HCW 2020. We're really fortunate today to be able to go off-site from the National Music Center and look inside their vault. And to do this, Elizabeth Reade is going to be our guide. So I'm going to introduce Elizabeth now. She is the Director of Development at the National Music Center. Elizabeth made her way to Calgary in 2001 from Montreal via Toronto and started working at the National Music Center in 2012 when the capital campaign was launched for the building of Studio Bell. The greatest excitement was the day that Studio Bell opened its doors to the public in 2016 on Canada Day, after 4 years of great dedication and work from every member of staff. NMC is celebrating its 5th anniversary this year. Part of this past year has involved a switch to digital offerings to our members and supporters, and today's video is an example of what NMC is able to produce in-house. With the worst of COVID hopefully behind us now, Elizabeth looks forward to rebuilding all the programs from education and exhibition to live performance and artist residencies, and incorporating all the work that has been done in the past few months for our guests. And now I'd like to pass it over to Elizabeth, who will introduce the team that put this video together.
Thank you very much, Irene, for that introduction, and greetings to everybody on this call. Your guides today will be Claire Neely, Manager of Collections and Conservation at the National Music Center, and Jason Talkin, Studio and Electronics Engineer, also at the National Music Center. And I would like to take just a minute to tell you a bit about them. Claire was born in Prince Edward Island, raised in Ontario, coming to Alberta in 2015 to support cultural heritage institutions recovering from the 2013 floods. That same year, she joined the team at the National Music Center, coordinating the safe transport and installation of NMC's vast music collection when we made our move from Customs House to the new building, Studio Bell, in the summer of 2016. With a Master of Art Conservation from Queen's University and a diploma in museum management and curatorship from Sir Sanford Fleming College, Claire oversees the care of NMC's collections and exhibitions, as well as liaisons with the icons of Canadian music to bring their incredible stories and memorabilia to Calgary. In 2019, Claire helped NMC achieve its recognized museum status. Jason was born in Winnipeg and raised in Calgary, and has been with the organization since 2012. A self-professed, dedicated gearhead, Jason has a background in fine arts, radio, and over 15 years of experience recording music. Since 2013, Jason has assisted with many of the conservative restoration projects on NMC's musical instrument collection, including the 3 historic recording consoles. In his current role, Jason splits his time between maintaining and repairing NMC's living collection and facilitating recording sessions. As the creative and technical liaison for the recording studios, Jason is passionate about making music technology more accessible to artists of all genres. So today we are showing you the video via YouTube. We have posted a link on the chat site for everyone to connect to. You do not need to shut down your Zoom. Just click on the link and it will take you directly to the video. Any questions you might have, you can post in the chat, and I will manage those for Jason and Claire afterwards. And as Annika said earlier on, if you have any technical difficulties, you can reach her on the chat site. So if everyone would like to go and watch the video, and we will get back together in 20 minutes.
Welcome to Offsite. This secret, nondescript building is actually a critical part of National Music Center's collection storage and care practices. Today, Jason and I would be happy to show you inside.
Let's go check it out.
Offsite, as we call it, is a satellite facility for National Music Center's artifact storage and restoration activities. It contains a variety of artifacts, particularly large instruments and a large number of stage costumes that are part of NMC's permanent collection but aren't currently being used downtown at Studio Bell, as well as thousands of instrument parts that keep instruments working. The building is organized into different zones depending on the sensitivity of the artifacts in a zone and the activities that take place there. Zone 1 is comprised of the front room and a corridor. Zone 1 is where we store electronic parts and parts machines. Parts machines are instruments that don't operate anymore, but are a source of parts for playable instruments, what we call our living collection. These materials are quite robust and don't require finely tuned temperature and humidity conditions. Zone 1 is also where we have a large wet table for artifact treatments that require washing. We've cleaned both electronic parts and costumes here in the past. We have a photography station in this zone as well, where we take before, during, and after photos to document the progress of artifact restoration. So here we are in the vault. It's a room within a room. It's made of only interior walls, meaning it's the most secure and protected space at Offsite. It's where we house playable instruments and the Country Music Hall of Fame textile collection. Zone 2 has additional layers of emergency prevention and mitigation in place to make sure factors like fire, water, temperature, humidity, and pests have no or minimal impact on the artifacts. For example, we have a sophisticated fire suppression system installed in Zone 2 that will spray a nitrogen-water mix into the room if fire is detected. Nitrogen gas, which removes oxygen from the air, and a water mist work together to stifle the fire. The two-part system limits the destructive power of not only a fire, but of the water dispensed to put it out. Instead of saturating through a sprinkler system, only a little water is used. We have floor-level water detectors in the room to detect a water leak or overland flood at key points. Temperature, humidity, and air filtration is controlled by a dedicated HVAC unit for the zone and is monitored through an alarm monitoring system 24 hours a day. Brush-like sweeps at the bottom of the doors to the room help keep any spiders and small pests from coming in, and a surveillance system is sensitive enough to pick up any movement from a moth to a human-sized intruder when the security system is activated. Furthermore, no treatment work is undertaken in the zone, so there is less movement in the space and no risks of spills or sparks. Zone 3 is the back room. It functions as a loading dock and storage space for oversized supplies, including empty artifact crates. It's also functioned as a low-control treatment space for the Rolling Stones mobile recording studio, but more on that later. A pallet stacker kept in this room helps us access and organize palletized collections throughout the facility and allows us to maximize its storage space. We also have some rolling ladders in the room so that we can climb up and look at or pick up small items directly.
Born out of a need to deal with the assessment of hundreds of artifacts damaged in the 2013 flood, the Customs House Collection Storage, NMC's first off-site storage facility, was secured as a triage location. It was important to limit the amount of times these damaged artifacts were moved, as well as ensuring there was adequate space for assessment and treatment. Using industrial fans and dehumidifiers, collection staff began treatment and assessment first by drying out items before they could be cleaned or treated. Electronic parts and instruments were cleaned and rehoused for permanent storage. While water can be harmful to most artifacts, a large-scale flood has a greater impact because of debris that is carried into the artifacts by the water. While wooden objects are usually permanently affected by water damage, certain electronics can be restored to an unaffected condition. With treatments such as ultrasonic cleaning, circuit boards and the components on them were saved. This treatment, using the phenomena of cavitation, which removed dirt and debris from the hard-to-reach places, cleaned instrument parts such as circuit boards. As treatment continued and objects that permanently were damaged were de-accessed, NMC was able to begin renovations of the space so that it better suited our long-term collection storage needs. Through the support of the Alberta Museums Association flood funding grants, NMC was able to turn this once run-of-the-mill storage location into a world-class storage facility. Upon completion of the renovation, NMC was able to use the off-site storage facility as a staging and restoration space for the collections moved from the Customs House to Studio Bell. This allowed collection staff the space to work on artifacts previously too large for treatment at the Customs House. Plans were made for a permanent installation of the Rolling Stones mobile studio next to the historic King Eddie. The collections team went ahead with restoring and treating the studio equipment in the truck, as well as decommissioning the vehicle for permanent installation at Studio Bell. The recording console and monitoring systems had their functionality restored and were thoroughly tested. The truck's flammable materials, such as engine oil, were removed to mitigate future risk to the artifact and the building it would be housed in. Agents of deterioration were mitigated by the use of various treatment processes. Silica gels were added in areas of concern for moisture, and rust was treated with chemicals to ease the rate of corrosion. The successful restoration was celebrated with staff and donors at NMC's first Rolling Stones mobile studio listening party. Guests traveled to the secret location on Calgary's own base bus. The loading dock area where the truck had been restored had been converted into a party zone, and the RSM studio provided the soundtrack to the night. The newly restored studio equipment played historic tunes recorded by the truck. Being such a success, a similar listening party experience is now offered by the King Eddie. This allows guests to explore the studio with an interpreter and pick their favorite records to listen to within the truck. With catering now offered by the King Eddie, it's fantastic to see this once-in-a-lifetime event transformed into a new tradition at Studio Bell. In addition to being discovered by visitors, the studio is now fully functional and since opening has hosted many artists such as the Roadhammers, Randy Bachman, The Tea Party, and Harpoonist and the Axe Murderer. The truck continues to inspire the musicians that come from all around the world to record with this one-of-a-kind historic recording studio. In order to maintain a diverse range of electronics and instruments now considered legacy electronics, NMC has strategically collected parts in parallel to collecting artifacts. This collection of parts, instruments, documentation, media, tools, and instrumentation provides the necessary items for keeping a collection of this size and scope alive. As the private repair business that supported this legacy music technology slowly started to disappear, NMC was proactive in transporting and storing these soon-to-be rare items. When the Roland Corporation decided to close their repair division for Western Canada, collections staff drove out to Vancouver to sort and pack a large donation of parts. These parts are now housed at our off-site storage facility and will ensure our instruments will remain functional for decades to come. When new or used parts are no longer available, the only option is to find these parts in instruments that no longer are complete enough to function. These parts machines provide donor parts to working instruments so that other examples remain functional. Here we have 3 Hammond Nova chords, which will serve as potential parts donors to our fully restored Hammond Nova chord, which is the centerpiece of NMC's main live room in its recording studio. As this particular instrument was manufactured in 1939, most of the parts are no longer available for purchase 82 years later. If parts or parts machines are not available, then NMC either has to adapt newly manufactured parts or has to create new parts. The Trident A range is currently being restored, requiring custom-made circuit boards and brackets to accommodate modern equivalent replacement parts. NMC has also invested in 3D scanning technology so that physical modeling of parts can accurately be measured without any risk to the artifact. Once scanned, collection staff can use computer-aided design technology to design and manufacture replacement obsolete parts.
The Vault is home to a number of special collections, including over 150 Canadian Country Music Hall of Fame stage costumes and accessories. Famous former wearers include Hank Snow, Lucille Starr, Gary Buck, Terry Clark, and Katie Lang. From leather fringe to metal and glass rhinestones, the costumes are elaborate, and many were custom made for the artists, like country couture. Unlike playable instruments that require regular tuning and performing to fulfill their intended use, we want to handle costumes as little as possible because their intended use is entirely aesthetic. To avoid straining them or leaving deposits that could be permanent, we store the costumes and accessories in special ways. So now we're in our vault room and I'm standing within our compact storage shelving. This is where we store over 150 pieces of the Canadian Country Music Hall of Fame costume collection, which includes both outfits and accessories like cowboy boots here. This pair of boots belong to Ian Tyson, and as you can see, they're a little bit different from the others in that they're incredibly long, so they've required flat storage in this case. But all others have been stored upright and in a similar way. So the mounts that we have here allow us to pick up the boots from a board rather than handling them directly. This means our hands aren't in direct contact, even if we were to wear gloves, with the boot material, meaning there's less potential for damage. It also means that by being a similar size, we can stack and pack these items very quickly and efficiently if needed in an emergency situation. We're standing in front of the costume collection now. These costumes are all contained in boxes that lie flat, allowing the costumes, which often have really heavy embellishments like rhinestones or leather fringe, keeps them lying flat so they're not stressed when they're hung. You'll see that we've got a barcode on every box label. This is our inventory system that we're just starting to implement. It'll allow us to scan in barcodes and create inventory lists and move lists very easily. Each barcode is assigned to individual pieces of a garment. The storage of the costumes is carefully planned to minimize the amount of handling that we do directly on the costume. If I lift the lid here, you'll see that the costume is under a cotton sheet, and there's also a sheet beneath it. That lower sheet acts like a stretcher, and we can lift the entire costume out of the box without handling the textile directly. The former owner of this costume is Brian Sklar. Brian is a Saskatchewan-based musician, but a major fixture at the Calgary Stampede for many years. Just like all of our costume, this one is stored with cotton sheeting and other sustainable materials that can be washed and reused over time rather than being replaced like paper materials. One of the unexpected ways our volunteers are engaged in collections care is the creation of these covers. Made of a soft textile-grade archival Tyvek, they're sewn custom to the size of the instrument. They allow the instrument to breathe while protecting it from dust. And we've had sewing bees where volunteers are measuring, cutting, and sewing these covers for us. This is a new initiative, and eventually we want to cover all of the instruments, which at this facility means about 50 covers. The covers would replace these plastic sheets which don't provide light protection and aren't custom fit, which means it's hard to move the instruments in the space when covered.
We hope you've enjoyed this peek at the collections and activities at our special off-site facility. From here, we provide excellent care for music history and make that history accessible to the public at Studio Bell. With the support of the cultural heritage community and our donors, we grow the collection and ensure it can be a source of joy, inspiration, and education for many years to come. Thank you for watching.
Okay then, let's start moving towards the questions and getting some of these answered. How many instruments were impacted by 2013 flood? Jason, would you like to take this one?
Sure. There was about 173 pianos in storage, which were kind of most affected. Generally, with a grand piano, to save space, you'll take the legs off and store it on its side, on its spine. And in the customs house storage, we had about 13 inches of water. So for this particular, even though everything was on pallets that were about 3 inches, there was still about 7 inches of water line, a lot of which you can see kind of in those photos, which affected a lot of the wooden artifacts. The good news is a lot of the electronic collection that was in the lower levels of storage was actually already not functional. So they were already parts machines. And as I said in the video, a lot of these electronic items were able to be restored to their previous condition. So once that soot, that dirt was removed, they're now, those items are now back on shelves, and we can, since they've been treated, we can go and take parts from those machines just as we would have had before the flood. Other than that, there was some parts collections that were affected, but by a lot of luck and circumstance, the previous week I had spent about a month sorting parts, and they were up on a big bench and they were unaffected, so we were able to remove them. Probably one of the saddest thing was some of the documentation that we lost. So we had some of the original manufacturing documentation from different synthesizer companies, and some of that stuff was treated. One of the cool treatment methods in a flood is you can actually take paper objects like a book or a manual, and you can actually freeze that. So we have we have a couple freezers at offsite where that stuff is treated, and just like your steak will get freezer burnt and crystallize over time, basically what happens is that moisture is removed. So some of that documentation was lost, but some of it is under treatment currently.
Okay, I noticed an old upright radio in the video. Is this the kind of thing you would accept as a donation?
I can talk to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we do have quite a large collection of radios that you would see at offsite, and a number of them are downtown at Studio Bell. And our acquisition strategy is to try to always represent Canadian manufacturers from individual provinces, and then also look for really excellent, unique examples that might be from international makers. So at the moment, it's not a collecting priority because we do have a fair size collection, but we're always interested in hearing about those gems. And we do have an online artifact donation form to fill out if anyone's interested in letting us know about something they have.
Great. Have you tried to replace the wooden pianos that were damaged in the flood?
Yeah, so one of the things about pianos is they made a whole lot of them. And so while there were some kind of historic one-off pieces that were damaged that are irreplaceable, there is quite a few that we have been able to find since. And once again, it's just one of those things, like Claire said, it has to fit into our collecting strategy. One of the things about collecting is there's a cost associated with collecting that people don't often think about. And one of the sayings that we have is the down payment is free. So even if you're willing to donate a piano to this organization, we have other costs associated with storing, caring, ensuring that artifact, and that therefore we can't just take any artifact. It has to fit within our strategy of collecting, or else it gets out of control very, very quickly, both from a space perspective and a financial perspective. So as Claire mentioned, we're focused on telling the story of music in Canada, and then also with a focus on telling the story of music technology and music manufacturers large. Our priority is always for living collections. We are one of the most unique collecting organizations in the world in that we actually restore and maintain and let artists use our collections, which is a very rare thing for museums. So obviously the state of what that instrument is in, whether it's playable, whether it's tunable, whether it's been sitting in a barn for 50 years, these are all factors that we equate into whether or not we can acquire something. If it has a desired use in the studios, we're more likely to say yes than something that needs to be restored, just because there is a high cost burden with actually restoring an instrument that's been sitting for several decades to a playable function.
One of the very creative things that was done to the damaged pianos from the flood was by a sculptor by the name of Patrick Marold, who was the artist that was commissioned to do our public art piece. And Jason, I would love you and or Claire to describe what he did, because it was a very creative use for soundboards that were damaged and otherwise rendered useless in the solar drone piece.
Yes. So I'll take this one, I guess, Claire, if that's all right. So we have in our Sky Bridge, which is an amazing vantage point for the city. If you haven't seen it, you'll have to come visit us. We have free admission for the weekends, all the rest of the year, and it's something that's definitely worth seeing. But within our 5th level, there's a bridge that connects our 2 buildings, and there is actually 16 sound vestibules mounted to the wall, each with an adjacent solar panel that's on the roof above it. And essentially they're these basically structures like wooden boxes that resonate, that were made out of these flood damaged pianos. And we were able to take apart the pianos and then send the parts down to Patrick, who's based out of Colorado. And within his workshop, he built these 16 different sound vestibules, and each has its own string and an actuator. And this actuator is excited when there's basically light present at the solar panel on the roof. So 16 sound making devices mounted to the ceiling, and then 16 solar panels. And as the light in the day kind of changes, different harmonic structures of the different strings resonate throughout the day. So as clouds pass by, as you know, the sun goes from the east to the west, you basically have an instrument that's played by the sun. It's really quite a unique thing, and it's something to see. So come check us out on the weekends this year, and you'll see that on level 5.
So Irene, I don't see any more questions here to be answered. I don't know whether you'd like to come on and speak at this time.
Just ask once again, I mean, maybe people are just overwhelmed by what all they saw, because when else do we have a chance to go into a storage site and see all the things that you have, and to realize the complexity of what you have to go through to store all of these things? It's amazing. So just give people a minute or two to see if they do come up with any other questions. But while we're waiting, I just want to say on your behalf that thanks to the generous contribution of Bell Canada, that NMC is open and free on weekends. So everybody should go down and see the things that are there. It's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of fantastic things to look at. I guess not so much do right now because of COVID restrictions, right? Or are people able to do things?
The interactive elements of the exhibitions are not fully back to where they were. You know, as restrictions ease and as we keep going, it's a day-by-day situation, but we will be opening up more and more. A question has come in: are you also open on weekdays now? Right now, it's just weekends. Again, this is something that we will open up, and things will change as the weeks go by.
I'm sure that's the question that we all want to know, as we were talking about before the program started, that would be nice for some of us to come down during the week.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just jump in and say that Studio Bell is definitely not quiet though during the week. Yesterday, we had our tech team getting ready for a wedding reception, and last week or earlier this week, we had an artist rehearsing and then taping a performance. So the building is definitely being used this while we're closed during the weekdays for private events and tape performances that I'm sure will be released soon. So while we prepare behind the scenes to get ready for a full reopening of our interactives and hopefully weekday admission as well, we're definitely, all of our teams are really busy during the week with these other events.
Can one of you comment on your artist in residence programs? You alluded to this in the film, but talk a little bit more about that and how that these people are able to come and use some of this equipment that you have.
Sure. So within the West building, which is attached to the King Eddie, we actually have 5 different studio spaces. And these spaces are very unique in that they're all connected together and they can be used in any combination. So we have a couple avenues of access for those facilities. One of which is the Artisan Residence Program, which is actually a sponsored program. So we actually have a corporate sponsor that sponsors a certain amount of spots per year. There's an application process through our website, and then a committee will go through those applications and pick the 12 best applicants for the year. And then we host them for a week of recording where we provide a recording engineer, an instrument specialist, and a time and space with the collection to basically create new musical work with this historic collection. It's a fantastic offering, and we've had plenty of artists come through. And if you check out our website as well as our YouTube channel, there's a few different synopsises of past residencies, all of which have been incredible. Now, if you're not selected for an artist in residence program, our studio facilities are available commercially. So you can actually contact us through our website, studiobell.ca/recording studios. And within there's an inquiry form, and that will link you to our studio manager, who can inform you how best to use the studios and the collection for your next recording project. So it's something that we really are proud of, in that we hold these collections in trust for the entire music community of Canada, but also for the world. And it's important to us that, to let people know they have different avenues of access. So even if you can't afford to come record with us, you can still apply to be an artist in residence, which is a great program. And we love seeing new art being created with these fantastic historic instruments.
So how long do these residencies usually last?
So depending on the project, it's usually 5 to 10 days, so 1 or 2 weeks. And in the past, it's been 2 weeks, and it depends on the project and how many people you have within your ensemble, and what your actual goals and accomplishments are. So one of the great things is that with the facilities being so fantastic, there's minimal setup time, so once you get in the facility, you can really get to work. And we've had a lot of people, for example, do a complete album in 5 days time, which is unheard of these days. Although back in the day, you would have recorded 3 songs in a 3-hour session. So it's whatever you want, however you want to approach it. The great thing about the studio is we have technology from the 1950s all the way to modern technology. So we can really approach a recording session in any way that has been done in the past.
It's fantastic. Elizabeth?
Yes, I was just going to say, I think this is for Claire. What kinds of historic sheet music do we have in the collection?
Oh, that hasn't been a big area of collecting for us. It's definitely something that we're offered, but it's not something that we actively collect for use. So we did recently, though, accept some items from belonging to a composer named Wolfgang. Oh gosh, I've just forgotten his name. An Austrian composer who was working in BC. So that was kind of a unique case. Wolfgang Bottenberg was his name, and he had been composing within Canada. So for that reason, we accepted it. And what we really appreciated were the handwritten notes, annotations made on the sheet music that really gave it that personal touch. And we thought that was made it very special. I just wanted to make a note that I've dropped into the chat a link to our virtual tour, which we just launched July 1st in celebration of our 5-year anniversary at Studio Bell. And this is a place, if you're not musical like myself, this is a great way to go in and see the studios, the instruments, and the recording spaces that we have.
Which brings me to a wonderful comment that's come in from Mar. For anyone who has never been to NMC, even if you hate music, you would love a visit here. There is so much excitement with seeing costumes, instruments, and especially the huge Kimball Theatre organ. I highly recommend a visit and take the tours that are offered. Thank you. Thank you very much for that.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Could you comment on the relationship between NMC and the King Eddie, and when we'll see a lot more live music from there?
The King Eddie is open. It's running. We're open from Thursday until Sundays. We're open for 10 days of Stampede. We have just opened the rooftop fully at the King Eddie as well. So we are offering live music Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays in both areas. And you know, again, we will keep opening more during the week as demand requires, and try and keep it filled with music and live performance. Every day is a new day in Alberta, and we are doing our best to meet the challenge of it. But we've opened with a brand new menu and a whole brand new look, and you know, it's very exciting. I sit at my desk on a Friday, and the music starts at 11:30 a.m. as the bands practice, and my desk is vibrating and shaking, and it's just a wonderful thing to have it all back.
That's great. Any other questions coming in? Doesn't seem to be any right now. I'm sure that for a lot of people, you know, it just brought back 2013. I mean, how can we all forget that period of time? But to see the water damage that was done, I mean, that was really, you know, gripping. I mean, that was in the film. So I wanted to express that part for sure. Thank you so much. That your film was amazing. And I'm sure that a lot of people will end up watching this again when they have a chance. And I'm looking forward to looking at the virtual tour. I know that, like every other institution during COVID, you did a huge amount of virtual programs. So I want to thank you for that. And thank you also for this program today. And thank you for the Claire and Jason for all the work that you put into that film. And with that, we'll close this off. Please remember to check out our website at chinookhistory.ca for information regarding all HCW programs, virtual and in person. You will also find a listing of our valuable supporters, such as the National Music Center. You will also find how to join our society and how to support our programs. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and we'll see you at the next event. Thank you.